just when you're doing your research, and I'll lead off with you, Brad, how much do you take a look at course history when it comes to the Masters and how guys have played on this course in the past? Because I feel like, unlike all the other majors where you've got a rotating cast of courses where you go to, it always stays the same with the Masters, and I feel like that's one big thing that you're able to do with handicapping this event.
Yeah, I look at course history a lot. This is one of the few places where you absolutely have to know how this course plays. The undulation is way more different. So I've been told in person than it is on television. We've only had, one golfer win in their debutante appearance since 1979. So it just shows you how difficult it is. Plus, there's just so much added pressure going down Magnolia Lane, so much that you have on your shoulders trying to become a Masters champion. Your first time is always very difficult.
And I'll pose the same question for you, Pam. How much do you take a look at course history and how guys have performed in their past few Masters?
For me, for the Masters specifically, it's kind of just a cherry on the top. I don't weigh it heavily, and only because how a player is playing now compared to what they did 5 years ago is kind of irrelevant for me. So I'm more so interested in, have you played here and how often enough? How many rounds do you have recorded? So I want the familiarity, but I don't necessarily need to be tagged on with some of the results, especially something like this weekend where we're going to have like 4 days of different type of weather conditions. That wasn't always the case here in the past. And plus, this is also an elongated course now. It is now the longest yardage in tournament history at over 7,500 yards. So it's going to be a little bit different. Players are not going to be able to kind of cut the corners. They're going to have to hit dead straight, and they're going to have to hit a better, longer approach shot than years past.
And I think that you bring up such a good point as well. While the Masters is not going to be making wholesale changes from year to year or anything like that, it does change a little bit from year to year. You mentioned it. It is going to be a little bit of a longer course this year than it really ever has been. And Brad, how about you take a look at this and the fact that there are a few dimension changes with the Masters this year?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like Pam said, there's a lot of shots that are going to be longer approach shots. They're not going to be able to go for greens in two. And then if the weather comes and softens up this course, like you pretty much are going to have some of these short guys hitting very long iron and approach shots, which means they're going to be missing greens more often. So they got to rely on their wedges a lot more than they normally would. And wedge play is such an important factor here already. It's going to be interesting to watch. I didn't weight driving distance as much in years past as I am this year. But then again, the holes where they're forced to lay up, driving distance might not be as big of a factor as I'm believing.
Yep, it's so interesting to really gauge all of it because, I mean, you guys just mentioned it. It is going to be a little bit of a longer course, but there's also going to be most likely a little bit of inclement weather. And Pam, how much do you take a look at that? Because it is probably going to be some rough conditions with regards to this Masters. And how much does that cause you to really hold off maybe a little bit on taking a few outrights, taking a few top tens early on, and maybe doing a little bit more after the first round, after the second round, or perhaps in round betting?
The weather does not scare me at all. Fire at will. I am going full load on the Masters on every bet that I feel confident in because all of the players that I'm choosing are some of those distance players. And I'm not just talking about off the tee with their drivers. I'm talking about the players who can hit some of those mid to long iron shots. You're talking about Rory McIlroy's and players like that who can just absolutely bomb it with whatever club you put in their hand. Yes, it does correlate to having strong iron play because whether it is going to be rain early on, as mentioned, it's going to soften the course a bit, but that's also going to give players the opportunity to fire directly at the pins because you're not going to have the ball roll off the green as frequently until maybe possibly Sunday when the rain stops and out comes the sun just a bit, but you are going to have cooler temperatures. So more so for me, I'm just looking at the players who can absolutely bomb it with their long irons, strong iron play, and then correlated with that short game. If you're going to be missing some of those greens, I want a player that's going to be able to get up and down. That's going to be a vital part for me this week.
And I think that it is interesting that you bring up so many of the guys that are a bit longer off the tee, like a Rory McIlroy. He finds himself towards the top of the odds board at DraftKings. He's the number 2 short shot, with Scotty Scheffler currently being the number 1 option. Jon Rahm, he's number 3. We know that he's able to bomb it relatively well off the tee as well. And when it comes to more of these short shots, like a Rory McIlroy, like a Jon Rahm, because a lot of these guys that they do have that long driving range, they are a little bit closer to the top. how much do you take a look at things in terms of outrights, what have you, but knowing that there's a little bit of less of a payout if a guy like a Rory McIlroy wins outright, and this is for you once again, Pam, how much do you take a look at that and maybe think, okay, maybe I should play a few matchups instead?
I play Rory McIlroy the same at the Masters. I will play him the same here as I do with every other tournament that I feel confident that he'll contend in. And that I put a little bit on his outright. I don't love it at 7-1, but it is 100% warranted. Instead, what I love to do is put all of the players that I like to win as an outright, which is typically about 5 or 6, also bet them as first round leader. And then if players like Rory, who I love but doesn't have good odds, hopefully he either wins the first round, leads after the first round, or if maybe he doesn't and has kind of a bit of a bad day, look for him to contend in the second round, the third round. That 7-1 odds are going to jump up to at least 10-1 or higher. I would grab him on the live line because this is now a major. I am expecting players to play 4 full days of golf. Who are the players that I trust on day 4? Players like Rory, players like even like Scotty Scheffler. The stronger mindsets, the more experience, the players who have a lot of rounds here at the Masters at Augusta. So either play Rory first round leader, outright free, or look for a better live line after day 1.
I think that that's a really good strategy to take, being able to take him just in terms of round 1, because if he wins at 7-1 just in terms of that first round, that's pretty much as you would get on an outright right now, to right around a plus 750. So I think that that's a good strategy. And Brad, I know you sort of have a little bit of a tier system. I know that you sometimes take a few shorter shots and then you go a little bit mid-range, and then you've got those 1 or 2 guys that might be a little bit further down the board and you take a look at them outright. You do this with quite a few tournaments. Is the Masters much the same with regards to taking a few short shots and then having more of your mid-range and then your 1 or 2 guys that you think might be a little bit of a dark horse a bit further down the board?
So it really depends on basically what the odds are going to look like. I love my tiered system, and I just try to bet on golfers who I think their odds are disrespectful. And with the Masters, I do eliminate a lot of those golfers because it's so difficult to finish inside the top 20. I don't want anything shorter than probably plus 125 for 90% of the field for a guy to finish inside the top 20. But that's not going to stop me. Like a guy like Sung J M, who has great tournament history. He has 6 top 20s on the year. You're getting pretty good value on him to finish top 20. I might not be gung-ho to go bet on him to win outright, but I could still get a little change back betting him to finish in the top 20.
I do think that it's so interesting to take a look at this tournament and just the various ways to be able to dive in. And Pam, when it comes to taking a look at the Masters as well, you're obviously going to have a few outrights, but how much do you take a look at the derivative market as well? A few top 10s, a few top 20s, go down the list a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm a very conservative bettor when it comes to the PGA. If I can get pretty good value, anything at minus 110 or better plus money odds for a top 20, that's basically where I stop. I'm not one of those people who are going to bet, oh, but I love the top 10s. They're going to get them at 2-1 odds. The longer the risk, you are increasing your risk by taking some of these odds. So I'm very conservative. I take a top 20 most often, pair them with my outright, do first round leaders. Head to head is where my bread and butter is, and then I call it a day. And if I hit a first round, great. We're free rolling for the rest of the weekend. And then if we happen to hit an outright, which I hit 3 in the last 6 weeks, you're doing pretty well for yourself. So it's been a great season. I like my system, but everybody is different. And PGA is so nuanced in how you want to bet, and it's all based off of the amount of risk you're trying to allocate for yourself. Do you want to have 10, 15 tickets, or do you want to have, I only want to bet outright, that's it, let's see who wins on Sunday. So I'm a little bit more of conservative as far as just taking the placings. I never like to ladder either, so top 20 is typically where it's at for me.
I do like that system. And by the way, congratulations. 3 out of 6. That is a really good run. Yeah. Trust me. There's so many people. I know that Matt Humans here at the network, I think that he had like 5 second place finishes in like 10 weeks. So, that is very difficult to do. And Pam has been on a roll, and so has Brad. And coming up next, we're going to get their picks for the Masters right here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Having a little bit of a roundtable chat, taking a look at the Masters. And Brad, let's dive into some of your plays. I know that we were talking about your tiered system a little bit in the last segment. Who are some of the guys that you have fired in on for the Masters? And is there maybe a guy or two that has not made your card yet that if the odds improve a little bit more, they might make it?
Yeah, so I'm going pretty favorite heavy this week, right? We talked about it. Brooks Koepka said it best a couple of years ago, where he said, when you get to the majors, you have this sense that it's easier to win than a regular tournament because you can automatically eliminate half the field. They don't have, the prowess. They don't have the mental fortitude to win these events. For me, I think this is a very top-heavy major, especially with the course history, the tournament history, that the last 10 winners were all inside the top 25 who've won the Masters. So I'm going to kind of stick to my guns in that, with some exceptions, because some of the live guys might be floating around by not earning official world ranking points. But I like Scotty. I like Rahm. Scotty is trying to become in great company with only 3 golfers have won back-to-back majors: Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, Nick Faldo. And I think Scotty's game is just the absolute best in the world right now. He's gaining the most strokes per round on average. I think he'll be able to handle the pressure. And then when I talk about Rahm, we kind of softened on Rahm, right? He won 3 tournaments to start the season. And then he got sick. He got sick at API. He was unable to practice. Then people kind of wrote him off. He's plus 100 to win this tournament. I put an odds boost on him, just like I did with Scotty Scheffler. If API never happens, and if he never loses to Scotty at Dell Match Play, I'm not guessing we're getting his odds better than plus 700. So I have to take a stab at Rahm. And then I was really shocked. I do a lot of modeling. Rahm was 3rd in my model, but if you look at total strokes gained over the last 5 years at this course, he's number 1. The way he's playing, how good he is, it's hard not to want to bet him.
And I think that it's so interesting to take a look at this field because I do lean a little bit more towards the favorites as well. Pam, are you a little bit more favorite heavy this week, or are there a few players down the board that you see a bit of value with?
I am also on some of the favorites. I also do like Scotty Scheffler. I like Rory McIlroy, and both of them for the same reasons. They're number 1 and number 2 for ball striking. You're talking about the 2 best iron players on tour, and they both kind of have the same problem era right now where they're kind of not that great at putting. If either one of them is just gaining 1 or 2 strokes with a putter, they're probably going to be winning this tournament, and not just by winning, they're going to be winning by margin. I think the furthest player that I have down the board is Jason Day. I don't use models. I really just use kind of a bit of the eye test, and I just look at how players have been playing in recent form. And when I say recent, I'm talking about the last 28, 32 rounds. And Jason Day, he is it right now. He is third in the field for strokes gained total behind Rahm, behind Scheffler, and he's the only one of those 3 players that hasn't won a title. I strongly believe that one is on the way, and I know that you can argue because I've been having this debate on Twitter, is that Jason Day hasn't done anything in the last few years. Yeah, well, players have to kind of progress into their game and become a stronger player now than he was then. I mean, he is playing some of his best golf of his career, and he does have, even though it was back in the day, some really great course history. He has a few top 10 finishes here at Augusta. He took 3rd back in 2013, and I know that was a forever ago. But like I said, he is rounding out into some of his best form. But because he doesn't, and he can, but because you're being compared to the Rahms, the Schefflers, the Rorys, he's kind of being undervalued in that aspect. So 22 to 1 for him for having outright. I love him. And he's probably I'm most excited to see Jason Day. I love Scotty. I love Jordan Spieth. Those are my Longhorns, hook 'em horns. But I also really would love to see Jason Day get some recognition for as good of golf as he is playing right now.
Yep, and for Jason Day, it's been a long and winding road for him the last few years, so to see him getting back towards the top of the odds board, that is nice to see. And something that I noticed with both of your picks is that, Pam, I don't think you had a single live golfer in terms of your bets. I know, Brad, you had one in Cam Smith. How do you guys gauge the live guys that are going to be playing in the event? I'll start with you, Brad, because you did take one guy in Cam Smith, because I think that this is such an interesting topic. It has been very polarizing in terms of golf, but I do think that the preparation that you put in for live as compared to the PGA Tour, it is a little bit different, and it might be to their detriment in this event.
I'll tell you, Greg, it's difficult because not only do I have to watch these guys play without any data, I also have to touch on them psychologically. How are these guys doing? How are they handling this kind of pressure? All of this drama going on. And I ultimately landed on Cam Smith because as long as I've been a fan of Cam Smith, there's one thing that you know about this guy. He's cool, calm, and collected. I mean, the man brought 2 different sets of clothes just in case he's not allowed to wear his live outfit. That's totally cool. He's a sweet guy, but he also has great course history here. He has a T3, T10, and T2 in the last 3 years. He's absolute dynamite with his wedges. I don't really know how we can gauge the actual tournament reps they're getting. Tiger Woods alluded to this, where he said before a major, he wants to get some tournaments under his belt so he can get those real tournament reps. I was at Live Orlando, and I wasn't all that impressed with how these guys were playing. Like, it looked very exhibition-y. And this is no knock on Orange County National. Is my home course. It's the course that I play just about every single weekend. But I go out there and I get happy to play Orange County National because it's easy. It's easy for an amateur. These guys are just tearing it up. Now they have to go and transition to playing Augusta. So it's going to be very interesting. But I do like Cam Smith at his price. I'm playing him top 10 and top 20.
And I'll pose the same question to you as well, Pam, because I think that Brad brings up such a big point. It's really hard to see what in the heck is going on with these live guys. As he mentioned, there's darn near no data out there whatsoever. And I think that these are guys that are so difficult to handicap. And as a result, you're seeing very much diminished numbers from what you'd find on Cam Smith, on Brooks Koepka, as compared to where they were just 12 months ago.
Well, let's look a little further down the board then at the live players specifically. And instead of targeting the DJs and the Smith and Brooks Koepka, who just came off a win last week in Orlando, by the way, I'm not interested in those. If there was one player on the live tour that is appealing to me, it would be Mito Pereira. He had 5 tournaments in 2023 between the Asian Tour and the live tour, and he has gained strokes total in all 5 of those events. Now, he did mention that these are a little bit of easier courses. Obviously, it's a different field, a different format. But Mito Pereira was one of those players that I backed often when he was on the PGA Tour because he was top 10 in iron play. He was one of the best ball strikers on tour. He made my PGA card pretty often, and you're getting plus 125 for him to finish in the top 30. It seems to me that he has kind of kept purely going off of strokes gained total data. That is all we have. Going off of that alone, and everything is in the green. There's a potential that Mito Pereira is coming into this with almost the exact same form as when he left the tour. So if that's the case, getting plus money for a top 30 is worth a risk for me.
And allow me to try to put this into context in terms of the lack of data that we've got on live players. It would be like me trying to handicap college basketball by taking a look at the final score and absolutely nothing else. I mean, good grief. Best of luck to anyone trying to do that. Oh, it's so bad. But Brad, I know that you've got a few top 20s as well, and it's not involving live golf players. Take me through a few guys that you do have that were not necessarily on your outright card, but they made your list in terms of a top 20 finish.
Yeah, Corey Connors is the one I'm most excited about. I'm actually a little less excited that he won Valero because I was going to bet on him this week. It's so difficult to win back-to-back on the PGA Tour. But even in 2019, when he won the Valero Texas Open, he did play well at the Masters. I have him to finish top 20. Pam talked about this a lot. Great ball strikers. Corey Connors is a great ball striker who kind of dropped in his level of ball striking throughout the year, but you could see gradual improvements, and his ball striking was absolutely phenomenal last weekend. So I'm really excited to see him in the top 20.
It is going to be an absolutely tremendous Masters, and I was mentioning those live golf players. That is going to be a fun rivalry to take a look at. There's so many great players in this field. It's why we've got a little bit of a scramble really at the top of the odds board.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.